What motivated Russia's invasion of Ukraine? Experts dissect Putin's reasons and justifications for starting the conflict. On February 24, 2022, Russia shocked the world by invading Ukraine and ignited the violent conflict that continues today. Russian President Vladimir Putin made different statements to the public about why he started to commit crimes. Putin's justifications, how much they match the facts, and other reasons why Russia sent troops to the independent state. Putin sees Ukraine as Russia. Ukraine, which was once a part of the Soviet Union, later became an independent state. Declared a state and reinforced this decision with a referendum in December 1991, the day before the collapse of the Soviet Union. The country has remained independent since then. But Putin still refers to Ukraine as Russia and denies that Ukraine is a country in its own right. In 2008, he told President George W. Bush that Ukraine is not a country. Stephen Hall, a professor of Russian politics at the University of Bath in the United Kingdom, said many Russians still hold this view and that it is not just in the Kremlin. Russia considers the Ukrainian city of Kyiv to be the mother of Russian cities, and said it was impossible for Putin to have such a city outside of his country. Hall added that Russia should claim Ukraine's sovereignty to support its research as a superpower that has existed for thousands of years. Without it, Russia cannot claim to be more than 1,000 years old because Kyiv was 1,200 years ago and Moscow was still a forest, he said. Re-establishing Slavic Brotherhood. 15 republics are now part of the Soviet Union, and experts say Russia is more interested in Ukraine than in nearby Belarus and other former Soviet states in Central Asia. Hall said, Putin has always believed that Ukrainians and Russians are people, that they are part of the Slavic Brotherhood of Russia, Belarus and Ukraine. It's almost pointless when Ukraine has been increasingly aligned with the West in recent years. Professor Brian Taylor, professor of Russian politics at Syracuse University, pointed out that Belarus is still smaller than Ukraine and Russia is less willing to accept its own history. Thomas Graham, co-founder of Yale University's Russian, Eastern European and Eurasian Studies program, said Ukraine has been important to Russian thought for years, if not centuries. Former U.S. President's advisor to Russia, Graham, also said that Ukrainian territory has increased Russia's economic power throughout history, including supplying coal, iron and steel to many Russian countries from the 19th century. Russia would not have had great power in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, he added, without the Ukraine's Donbass region. Not satisfactory. For Putin, Russia has the right to rule Ukraine. Russians and Ukrainians are one nation, one people. When the Soviet Union fell, they became illegal and divided, accusing the West of trying to pull Ukraine out of Russia's friendship, he said. Russian propaganda, he said. He also pointed out that not only is NATO expanding, but often countries also want to join, apart from outside agreements. In Eastern Europe, this threat comes mainly from Russia. Chapter. Hall said he convinced an international audience that already had strong doubts about Western military alliances. If Russia can reach out to the few who feel this way, it will, create an electoral voice for Russia to try to limit Western interference, he said. Hall added that despite NATO enlargement, it was not due to what Russia did in Ukraine. Ukraine's ties to NATO deepened after Russian troops invaded eastern Ukraine in 2014 and ignited a conflict that lasted until the 2022 invasion. However, Taylor said he saw no explanation about NATO's so-called expansionist war. Taylor noted that until Finland joined NATO earlier this year, no new countries had joined the alliance since 2004, and even then there were only pretty small countries, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. He also stated that NATO has not increased its forces in the region, adding that, therefore, the participation of these countries does not mean that these forces are built at Russia's doorstep. In fact, Taylor said the United States had shrunk the size of its military in Europe until the powerful Russian army captured Ukrainian territory in 2014. It's all about Nazis. Nazis run Ukraine, so Russia must step in to stop them. Although Ukraine has a Jewish president, Vladimir Zelensky, there is no evidence that the country's leader was under Nazi control. Taylor notes that there are some people in Ukraine who identify with Nazi ideology, but it's a small group. They are not strong or important, but they are there. No. But there are Nazis in Russian politics, and there are Nazis in American politics, said. No. Russia's general perception of Nazism and fascism is different from what we have in the West. For them, Nazism is anti-Russian. So Ukrainians are Nazis because they are against Russia. Hall said he supported this Nazi ideology to gain support from the West, which was very sensitive to Putin's assertion that there was a Nazi problem in Ukraine. Wall and see what stick. But actually Putin only wants inheritance. According to Graham, the lack of evidence that Putin invaded Ukraine means that at least some of his public opinion is personal. His inclusion in the historical record may cause him to protest. Hall expressed concern that Putin, will I become the author of Russian history or will they write a book about me as Peter the Great, Catherine the Great, Stalin? Taylor agrees, saying that Putin sees himself as the leader of Russian history who has returned from Russia and is thinking about his history at the age of 70. Graham said, "What did the Tsars do? They expanded Russia. Yet why now?" Even taking all of the above into account, it's still an interesting question why the intrusion happens. Experts point to various reasons for the February 2022 invasion of Russia. One of them is the arrival of Zelensky, who came to power in 2019 after working as a comedian and actor. Hall said Putin believed Zelensky was someone he can lead in Ukraine. Taylor said Zelensky is also seen as the most popular person in the 2019 election. From the Russian-speaking region. Its first language is Russian. But then in 2021 Ukraine paid one of Putin's closest friends for treason. The Russian plan failed. So the only option left is the military option. He also pointed to the geopolitical reason why Putin did not announce the full attack soon. One reason is that US President Donald Trump came to power. Trump is a good friend of Putin, at least in public. The message, Taylor said, was openly critical of NATO. That means Putin can wait to see if the alliance gets from the inside out. Pro-NATO Joe Biden takes office. Taylor also acknowledged the prevention of COVID-19, saying that Putin has been more isolated than usual these 2 years. Mr. Graham said Putin's recent melodrama trend has been exacerbated by extreme isolation. Putin sees right. Graham believes that Putin will see the state of world politics in 2022 for a while. He noted that Zelensky's approval rating was lower than before the coup, and that some factionalism among the Ukrainian elite meant Putin thought they will not unite against him. Military withdrawal, new leaders in Germany and England, and pressure on the French president. Putin has every reason to believe that there is no Western culture to counter Russian aggression. Based on all this, Putin thinks he can invade Ukraine and take Kyiv in one day. But it didn't turn out the way he wanted.